Hi everyone, and welcome to the Retention Science webinar, Lifecycle Marketing, what are your customer lifecycle stages and marketing campaigns that work? I'm Alex Barcelona, Digital Marketer at Retention Science, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today's webinar and we will share that with you after the webinar. And feel free to submit questions in the chat box on the side of your screen, or you can also follow along with our Twitter hashtag LifecycleMar. With those items out of the way, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Tracy Randall, who's the former CEO and co-founder of Cooking.com. So thank you so much for being here today, Tracy, and I'd just like to hand it over to you, let you tell our audience a little bit more about your background and how you came to find out about retention science.
Sure, thank you, Alex. As Alex said, I was with Cooking.com, one of the founders, and was the CEO for about 8 years. I was with the company for 15. We sold the business to Target in 2013, and I met Jerry from the CEO of Retention Science during that time period. I was introduced to him through their seed investors, Mecker, and was just really impressed and excited about what Retention Science was doing. Email was a big portion of Cooking.com's revenue base, and we were working to do a lot of the innovative things that Retention Science's platform addresses.
Thank you, Tracy. And next we have Ryan, who's our Client Success Manager at Retention Science. So Ryan, would you like to just fill people in a little bit more about what your role consists of?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan. I'm one of the Client Success Managers here at Retention Science. I work with our primary clients for Honest, Dollar Shave Club, Experian, Zumba Fitness, and Target as a day-to-day manager to help them with strategy, tactics, and being able to help them fully utilize the Retention Science platform, specifically with our data science models. And how it applies to the different campaigns that they run on a daily basis and whatnot.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ryan. And with that, I will actually pass it right back to you, Ryan, so we can get started.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So first, we're going to start off with our agenda. But before I go there, there's a quote on the left-hand side of our presentation that we brought out from the Gartner Group, which I'm just going to read off to the audience. 80% of your company's future revenue will come from just 20% of your existing customer base. Many of you probably have seen this quote several times before in the past. You may know this for different areas of your business when it comes to finance, marketing, and looking at who your customers are and how much revenue brings in. What we really wanted to highlight today is how much of that 20% of your existing customer base is so important. That they could be 80% of your company's future revenue. And in today's agenda, we really wanted to focus on different tactics using lifecycle marketing to help you increase that 20% base of your existing customer. Because if we can move the needle of that 20% and make it even larger, it's going to help your company grow in the future with the revenue. So moving on to the agenda, there's 5 primary items here. The first one is we're going to go over a general definition of what lifecycle marketing is to Retention Science and to Tracy and her team at Cooking.com. We're going to go over some examples of stages in the customer lifecycle, a different approach to how we segment our customers using traditional methods and new methods at Retention Science, looking at examples of campaigns for each of these stages, and finally, how do we optimize your campaigns today? And we'll bring out some client examples that we have on the slides. So we'll first start off with what is lifecycle marketing. So for lifecycle marketing, we look at it as a customer who goes through different stages while they're engaged with your company. It's really from start to finish, starting when they sign up for your product, for your service. How do they actually make their first purchase? And after that, how do we keep them engaged? Whether it's with new offers, new incentives, or different types of product categories that you might offer. And then also finally, the advocacy stage of how do we make them your brand ambassadors and your advocates, and having them tell others about you. And after that, going through that cycle all over. So what we see at Retention Science is that successful lifecycle marketing uses data in smart ways to target these users from an individual level. All of your customers have different types of behaviors. They have different needs and wants. So how can we use data in the data science models to help target and touch these customers at different critical points in their life cycle? So the next step is going over some of the life cycle marketing stages. You'll find in this slide that we're really showing you these customers how they enter in that initial engagement with a welcome series as stage 1. A following stage for that is what we call the retention and activation series. Looking at the activation series, it's really about how to get these new signups and users and actually move them into making a purchase or following purchases. As they move from a general activation series, they fall into that recovery and that win-back phase. Had they not purchased for quite some time, what should that time look like? If you have multiple categories and products, some customers might need a month, some might be repeat purchasers every 2 weeks. How do we get them to recover? And finally, the fourth stage that we have here today is about the reward series, the advocacy. How do we have customers become brand ambassadors, loyal customers, and have them talk about your business and your services or products? So now I'm going to have Tracy tell us a little more about how Cooking.com looked at lifecycle stages or lifecycle marketing in the early stages of their business and later on as they grew to know more about lifecycle marketing.
Thanks, Ryan. As I shared when we were prepping for the call here, this was not really a term we used, was lifecycle marketing. We tended to look at customers as being new to cooking. We would look at their affinities. We had a lot of content on the site, so we tended to have consumers who had a high degree of affinity to the recipe content or had a high degree of brand affinity. And then we would have folks that were very active and engaged, so purchasing from us on a regular basis, using the content with a regularity, or lapsed customers that we were working to re-engage. The first real step we took, which I would say would follow how you guys really look at the way to market to consumers, was we had a welcome email that we introduced fairly early in the company and saw good results of bringing people on in a much more welcoming way rather than putting them right into a email that went out to the entire file. And so if someone was new to the file, they would get a little bit of background about the company, a little bit of overview about the types of services that Cooking offered, whether it be the recipes we had, the brands we carried. And we saw a lot of success from treating those folks uniquely rather than just putting them into a file and seeing how they behaved. That would also be the first one where we did a series approach. And again, excited about what you guys are doing because you kind of took it to the next level.
Great. And you mentioned something about being able to look at the customers and different content they were engaged with. Can you tell us a little more about how your marketing team was able to utilize that data as far as them seeing users were more engaged in specific recipes or different types of categories?
Yeah, we actually had 2 different email streams. So, interesting, I think we definitely wanted to get where you guys are at, which is based on the behavior of the user, putting them in the right email stream, but we had a much more binary situation where when the person came to the site and started interacting, they could pick, do we want to have primarily shopping communication from the company or recipe communication? and definitely work to try to integrate those two things more, because there was a lot of overlap as far as consumers' interest in getting both.
Great. And then as far as these life cycle stages at Cooking, I've worked with a lot of clients that they felt their main focus was, let's hit on the win-back series first. At Cooking, did you guys look more at welcome series, activation series before you moved into the win-back, or how did you guys start your life cycle marketing?
Yeah, we started with the welcome series, and I think a big reason was, a big focus of the company was email, and so we had a lot of active campaigns to build the email file, whether through co-marketing or marketing spending we were doing. And because that was an investment area, we wanted to put more thought and care into how we bring those on, and definitely saw better success by really tailoring the communication as far as where we got the person and hand-holding them into the file to be a customer.
Great, and I like what you said there as far as like being able to get through this welcome series and the stage. You were also able to understand like what acquisition sources were good, what type of customers you bring in. So retention and the life cycle stages really help you understand where you should acquire customers as well.
Correct.
So it all comes hand in hand.
Correct.
Great. So the next slide that we're going to go over is how to segment your customers. What we really want to talk about here is the traditional approaches versus the newer ones that we've had at Retention Science, and the different types of data models we're able to provide specific to email marketing and various channels. But traditionally, what we've tended to see are marketers looking at general demographics, age, gender, location, what registration source they came from. Some of the other ones would be customer lifetime value, which can be defined in many different ways depending on your business and how you look at it as a marketer or an analyst. But typically we would say CLV may be the historical purchases of your users of their lifetime. RFM, really looking at the recency, frequency, and the monetary value of all the users. How often do they come back to the website? What is that repeat purchase rate? And the next bullet point for discounts versus non-discounts. Traditional way of some of the marketers out there just looking at, okay, had they received a discount in the past, or had they not? And then finally, one of the other traditional approaches is just looking simply at email activity. When's the last open or last click? So on the right-hand side of this PowerPoint deck, you'll see the newer ones. The ones that at Retention Science we really focus on. We're looking at predictive demographics based on user behavior, not just a general demographic of like what age or gender they are, but based off of the products, the categories, or the services that they're browsing on your website. Can we actually build these predictive personas of your customers? Some of the other things we also look at is customer future value. What is that expected dollar spent at the user level before that customer hits their expected churn date or churn time? Some other ones, churn status, whether they're a ready-to-buy customer, whether they're at risk of churn, or whether they actually have just completely churned. Whether they are ready to buy, at risk, or churn, these three types of churn statuses can be across your entire lifecycle marketing cycle. And then the last couple ones, discount optimization, really focusing not just on whether users use a discount, but what are the offers? What are the discount propensities for these users? Does someone need 10%, 15%, or 30% to make a purchase? And at what point in the life cycle do they need the 10, 15, or 25? And then finally, multi-channel activity. So we really look at not just when's the last time someone came to your site or someone opened an email, but really if they opened an email, did they click it? Did they get to the site? And what actions did they take when they were there? So we're really looking at a multi-dimensional view of these users' behavior rather than just their last click activity as an example. So one of the next things is looking at how to assign segments to these different life cycle stages. And some of the questions that we always have are, what are these signs that we should be looking for? In general, you always want to look at the common customer attributes, the different cohorts of people signing up, when's their first purchase date, through their history, how frequent do they buy, last purchase date as well. Some of the top sellers, what are those products, categories, or services that you see that new customers come in and typically buy first? Recent activity. Do your customers have a higher propensity to log in? What is their last login date, depending on how your website functions and whatnot? And then additionally, customer lifetime value. Out of all your customers, who has that high CLV, and what are the different common attributes that exist there? Keeping in mind that CLV sometimes can be a little tough to read because customers who have been there for 3 years typically may have a lot longer CLV than someone there for a year. So really being able to see that temporal view of time and understand that. So Tracy, from Cooking.com, what were some of the signs that you guys looked for in the beginning when moving into Lifecycle, and what were some of the signs that you saw later on as your Lifecycle campaign started to mature?
Sure. I'll kind of go through your list here and give you maybe examples. I'd say from when a consumer first came on, I had brought this one up earlier, where we acquired them from was very important and an indicator of how good of a customer they were going to be. And so, there were certain avenues, certain cooking publications, certain particular content areas where we were able to acquire customers, where we would put them in a unique communication to bring them on, and those tended to be better customers than, say, getting them from an SEM campaign, which tended to be less loyal customers. As far as purchase history, we would have, from a life cycle perspective, I think, it was much more black and white, Ryan. So, folks either had lapsed and we were trying to get them back in the file, or they were active customers, and so we had a communication associated with the fact that they were good customers. We tended to discount less to the customers that were good customers, folks that we were trying to bring back in. We tended to use more of our discount dollars. Definitely for us, the product category was a huge indicator of how strong of a customer we had. Calphalon, for instance, tended to have very loyal customers, and so we tended to use that brand quite aggressively to bring people into the file. And so, we'd bring them in welcome and try to get them to buy with that first purchase. Calphalon had some good products. The lifetime value of those customers tended to be quite high. I think those are probably the main things that we used.
Great. And, while we're talking about being able to identify these signs or what you should look for, can you tell us more about your team? What was that process like? Did you have someone looking at the data every month, every week, every day? And how did you and your team make it more actionable?
Yeah. God, that was painful. So, I would say in the beginning, most of what Cooking had built, we had built in-house. So it was all internally built systems. Over time, we brought additional systems into the mix. From a site perspective, we used Omniture later on in the company. And so some of this information would have been pulled from Omniture. A lot of the information was stored in isolated places across the company. And so, we'd have to dedicate a lot of engineering time to create the type of reporting that we needed in order for the marketing team to have armed with how, what are the RFM, and that's what we tended to use, how many consumers are we acquiring each month, how much are they worth. And so it was an incredibly painful process to get that. We started probably doing it monthly. I think the team got it to weekly. And, as far as where we got from a maturity standpoint, we actually were in the process of integrating our email provider, which was StrongMail, with Omniture to, instead of just generating reports and then having the marketing team respond to those reports, that implementation would be more real-time. Very painful process, and I keep reiterating, I think that's what definitely attracted me to retention science, in that pulling all that data into one place and then having machine learning built upon it was definitely the direction we were working to build our capabilities of communicating with the customer.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, so talking about how retention science segments using data science, to tack on to what Tracy was saying, the process is very painful when you're looking at this data and really making sense of it so that marketers can do something with it. So the types of segments in that data science that we're really looking for is user-to-user personas. Being able to help our clients with this big set of data, really make it actionable so that they know that, rather than focusing on the 100 different personas we might have, what are the key attributes to show someone's about to churn in different parts of their life cycle stages, or show who are the ones who are going to buy right away during the welcome and activation stages. So some of the other segments here, how we can assign to the various life cycle, are using our churn status for seeing who's ready to buy, who's considered an at-risk customer, and who has completely churned off and will be very tough to win back. We also have product affinity, looking at different models of how users react to their recent behavior with items that you have or services, and then also looking at other customers that are similar personas that have purchased other products or categories before that we find have some type of correlation to these new type of purchasers or whatnot. And then finally, the multi-dimensional customer activity I talked about earlier. We're not just looking at a last click or last open activity, but really seeing did someone come back from this email and add something to your shopping cart. Because the intent of adding something to your shopping cart or signing up for something else is a lot more powerful than them just clicking onto the email. And finally, customer future value. Being able to predict how much dollar amount is going to be spent for these individual customer levels so that you can understand, do I give them a bigger discount? Because I know they're going to be spending this much more over their lifetime in the near future. Right, so the next section we're going to go through is campaigns and optimization. Wanted to bring up some of our client examples. As you can see here, we're going to start off in the engagement stage with our welcome series, talking about Honest Company. So for Honest Company, their welcome email is being sent to new subscribers and customers who have made their first purchase and were not already on their contact or email list. This welcome series can go for 3 to 4 different type of email templates and sent over 7 to 10 days. The 7 to 10 days, 3 to 4 emails is not a general item that everyone should be doing. When you have your historical data, it's really focusing on what type of product category or service do you actually sell, and what are the expectations of your onboarding process for your customers. You can shorten this, you can make it longer in different types of strategy. You'll either, one, get people to convert faster and shorten that time to purchase, On the second aspect, you can also grab a lot more customers that maybe wouldn't convert within that 7 to 10 business days. So this first email, we typically recommend that it should also be triggered upon the customer sign up. Some of the additional content that you can use to optimize your welcome series that we've seen become very successful, introducing your brand values, which most companies already will do this, but really highlighting who you are as a business and what you're trying to do. Getting the customers to really understand your product and what you're trying to do with your product is very important to eventually make them into brand ambassadors and in that advocacy stage. Looking at testimonials and reviews, having what the customers see as product or category services that you have, and having them see what other people are saying about it really does make a difference. In Honest Company's example, they have celebrity endorsements like Jessica Alba that can really help them, especially in the social media engagement. And for Honest Company, over time, as their business has grown, they really moved into different categories. So the Welcome Series can really highlight the different product categories that they touch upon. Early on, I recall that many people look at Honest and they say, well, if I don't have a baby, why am I going to go shop there? Over time, as Honest expanded their product categories into daily health, vitamins, cleaning, that really expands that audience and the number of customers they can touch. So Tracy, can you tell us a little more about your Welcome Series and what you started with and how did you expand with different type of content?
Sure. The Welcome Series would have been really the first one, as I said, that we undertook in a more sophisticated way. We had developed a welcome email earlier in the company's history where, as I said, we were pretty aggressive about building our email file. And so we had one email that we would send out to new people to the file, putting some information about the brand and kind of, gradually bringing them into the fold so they felt comfortable rather than just sending them a marketing message that may not relate to them at all. We picked this one to do first, like I said, because we had such a focus on building the email file. As I was recalling, Ryan, actually the first one we did was for the Food Network. So we actually ran Food Network's e-commerce business at the time. Mm-hmm. And similar thing, the file was growing very quickly. They definitely, like Honest Company, had a lot of different brand affinity. And so, we saw really good success and, built in many of the things you're talking about. The Food Network customer tends to be interested in a particular chef. And so, at the first email, there was just kind of an overview about the Food Network, the different chefs, the fact that they had a shopping presence, some of the brands they carried, and some of the services that were associated with the shopping experience. And then I believe the emails, I think it was a 5-part series that we did over a 2-week period. And it was responsive based on how the consumer interacted with the actual email. So did they click on Rachel Ray or Guy Fieri? Mm-hmm. Did they go to the site and look at products or look at the chefs? And so very similar to what you guys had here. And, just a huge improvement over what we had seen by just, a one email. The folks stayed opted in better. And again, since we were acquiring customers so many different places, our unsubscribe rates improved. The revenues from the email were stronger. And so, the intent of the company was to continue to go through each of the areas of communication to put in more of these types of series.
Great. And in the Welcome Series, a lot of it has to do with education, letting your customers know who you are, what you do, because everyone's very busy. They might sign up for your product, but they might not also get the chance to really go through the site, get to understand what your core company values are and how you're trying to help. So.
Yep.
So the next example we'll go through is in the retention stage, specifically for the activation series. So in this example, for Honest, we're looking at content. Usually when a customer goes in and signs up, the content pushes a lot on free trial. When those customers come into the funnel, go through the welcome series, and become a free trial subscriber, after that initial free trial phase, how do we get them to become an actual customer? So with some of the data that's been collected as they came to the site initially in that welcome series, they choose the free trial bundle that they're looking for. What are some of the next steps we can do to get them to be a converted customer, a paying customer? So in the Honest example for activation series, similar to the welcome series, we have a series of emails. It can be 4 to 6 emails in this example and sent over a course of 10 to 14 days. In the data, what we really look for all the users who subscribe to initial bundles for free trial, there's various range of what that churn might look like. Some bundles might have customers leaving within 7 days of that. Others might see 10 to 14 days. And since it's very, very personalized to every user, what bundle they subscribe to, you really want to look at that during your activation series as well. Just talking about product categories, some categories might have a longer replenishment cycle and some will have shorter ones. So during that activation series, it's very important to look at that. So some of the additional content that we've been able to help Honest in the activation series is offers specific to optimizing these offers. Do we give customers 20% off, 15% off, or 10%? The things that we look for are really through the historical analysis too of like how did customers perform in the past in conjunction with their current activity and user behavior on site. Do we see these customers who are on the free trial come back and look at different categories and products? Because based off of that, we can really personalize the content with good product recommendations or category recommendations. And these are some of the content examples that we really focus on during the activation phase. Can you tell us more about how Cooking looked at the activation phase with the different types of content that you guys use?
Yeah, ours tended to be pretty product oriented. And this one would be one that we didn't turn into a series. So it would be back to we had a particular strategy and the consumer would get a particular item based on that strategy. So, you know, for cooking, someone would get the welcome series. And then we found particular products that we would use to really get the person over the hump, right? So the welcome is like kind of onboarding them so they want to get your email communication. And then can you get that first purchase out of them? And so, you know, with cooking, we tended to use a strong priced Calphalon item. There was an item called the Everyday Pan, which was kind of legendary in our office because that tended to be the item we used. You know, it's good brand, good value, and trying to get the consumer into that first purchase. You know, for the Food Network site, we used a Guy Fieri knife or a Rachel Ray Bubble and Brown. And so they tended to be items that were well priced, broad spectrum, and really wanted to do more of a series here. I didn't share this in the prior. You know, the approach we had taken with Omniture and StrongMail, while we were happy with the results, the actual implementation of it was fairly long. So I think, you know, to get each one in place took a month or two of, you know, programming and integration between those folks. So getting each one outlined was still quite a you know, investment and resources to get them through.
Great. Yeah, definitely one of the follow-up questions I was going to ask was how is scaling work for you and the team when you went into Food Network and having specific categories of products? But I think you just answered that too, in that it took quite some time because when you were working on those programs, you know, you didn't have the benefits yet of specific tools that could really shorten that time. So.
Correct. And also, I think, the benefit of wrapping that up with the data science, typically bringing your email provider in with your reporting tool, they don't have access to a data science approach of like making sure that all the interaction with that consumer is getting included into your ability to segment and communicate unique products and offers.
Absolutely. Great. So the next stage that we'll go into is the recovery stage. We have an example here from Dollar Shave Club for their win-back series. Just an example of some of the content that they push out on the left-hand side for We Miss You. Definitely put a cute teddy bear and you'll find that you'll get a better conversion rate. For these emails, the customers are being sent this when retention science can predict that they are at risk of churning or have already churned. At risk of churning is pretty much looking at users that are going through their active monthly subscription based off of their behaviors and their previous purchase history. We do think that this customer is about to leave. Because they are about to leave, what you want to do is re-engage them with good content. Check up on them and just make sure that you're not leaving them in the dark. So that is one strategy that with our predictive models we're able to target these users effectively. In the win-back series, similar to how we talked about the welcome and activation stages, you can do several emails over a course of X amount of days. In the example of Dollar Shave Club, we put here sent over 30 days because in our data science and our models, what we found was in general customers were churning. After they churned, we had about 30 days to touch them because after that 30-day point, there was a huge drop-off in customers coming back. Here are some additional content strategy suggestions in this specific lifecycle stage. Sending the We Miss You content. You can also send a win-back offer, a reminder email. And what we actually found that was very interesting was plain text email. For some of these emails, we can, get a graphic designer, build great content. Sometimes what we found in a plain text email, when you really personalize it, wrote it as if someone was actually talking to the customer, a specific customer service rep, that could be very helpful. When you create more personal messages, better touch points that are really going to resonate with these customers, they'll tend to react better to the content as well. Tracy, can you tell us a little more about your win-back strategy, the type of content that you guys worked with?
Sure. I would say we used a few different tactics, which were kind of one-off as opposed to a series again. One of the things that we would do, and I think it was probably on a monthly basis, we would remind people if they had gift certificate balances, and so that tended to be effective. Another thing we would do, and primarily around the holidays, so Mother's Day, Christmas time, was to send out a thank you to our best buyers in the form of a gift certificate, which isn't necessarily a win back, but it was, let's try to see if we can get these folks to come in during this holiday period, but also look at the folks who had lapsed and can we give them some type of discount or strong offer and get them to come back during this, period of time where most people are in a buying mode. We did have a We Miss You email. I think we probably sent that out maybe monthly, and it tended to be lapsed folks as well. And we tended to use pretty aggressive discounting offers to get folks to come back and re-engage with the site.
Thanks. Yeah. So, in our case, what we really want to focus on new approaches is being able to segment these churned or win-back customers, not just with one discount, because some churned customers may be 4 or 5x buyers. They might not really need the biggest discount, but they're just looking for some type of re-engagement to bring them back.
Yep.
So. And then following, you mentioned this just shortly a little while ago about giving gift certificates. I think that really relates to our advocacy stage, the reward series, where we, really incentivize high-value customers. We want to make our customers all brand ambassadors. We want them talking about us in a good light and being able to reward them and make sure they know that we see it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the reward series, a good example is doing 3 emails over 90 days. What we want to look for here are those high-value customers, the ones that have high lifetime value. But we don't want to lose focus on just that total amount, because some of the newer customers might not have a longer or a larger lifetime value, but they might be moving in that rate where they will become that. So we really want the ability to cohort these users by high, medium, and low value based off of where they are in their life cycle as well. Some of the content that we can do in the rewards series that Tracy mentioned earlier, the exclusive sales events, we can look at a thank you, simply just telling your customers the thanks really resonates that we've seen. Anniversary emails, birthday emails, and making sure that we are personalizing our service to them as well. And these are good examples of what you can try to do in the reward series. Great, so now we're going to move into a recap. What we went over today in this webinar, specifically focusing on the 2 main ways to segment customers. What were the traditional approaches and what are the new ones using data science and data models for predictions. We talked about life cycle marketing stages, 4 specific ones in engagement, which we had an example of a welcome series with Honest. Retention, which we also had an example from Honest in their activation series. Recovery, which we showed the example of win back from Dollar Shave Club. And advocacy, which you saw there for loyalty emails from Starbucks.
Okay, thank you so much to Ryan and Tracy. That was great information and examples and tactics that people can start using in their life cycle campaigns now. We do have a couple of questions to go over from the audience. First, just a reminder that we did record and will share the presentation with you. So just to let you know, I know it seemed like a couple of people had some issues logging in, so we do have it recorded and we will be sharing it for you. Our first question, I believe this one is probably for Ryan. So if you have no background information on a customer, they're brand new, is it a best practice to let the customer self-identify which stage they're in via a survey or questionnaire, or should you wait until you gather more information on them and then assign them to a stage?
Sure. So I think this is dependent on what type of business you are as well. But usually when a new customer comes in, we've seen certain clients where there's not a long sign-up process. They're really just asking you for your email. You don't even get their first name or last name. When that happens, we really want the customers to dictate how we should group them and build their persona. So the things that we look for there are, what products or categories they might have gone to. If they signed up on your website, did they just look at a video about your brand? Did they ever even look at your shopping cart? It's not to say that asking for feedback isn't good. Getting feedback will always be very good. It just depends on how you want to shape that customer from that beginning stages of the life cycle.
Okay, thank you. The next question is probably for Tracy, because I believe you had some experience with this. Can you still run effective lifecycle marketing campaigns if you don't have a platform like retention science or a data science platform to get kind of the deeper information on your customers?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we definitely did this at Cooking, so it can be done. I would say that, the drawbacks of it are, one, it's going to take a significant amount of internal resources. So it tends to be a very long investment. And I would say the other downside is, whatever rules you set up, your business changes, your consumers change, time changes, your assortment changes. And so, not having the added benefit of the data science behind it, many of the segments and rules you set up are going to be, unfortunately, out of date sometimes before you can even start using them if the implementation takes a long time. And which, quite frankly, is some of the things that happened to us at Cooking. The implementation took so long that, the product cycle's changing, the consumer's changing. And so, I guess my recommendation would be to look for something that works for you and your business. It can be done, but it's, I would say, not optimal.
Okay, thank you. The next question is also for you, Tracy. What was the most common point of churn identified at Cooking.com?
What was the most common point of churn? I'm not for sure exactly what that means. In the life cycle?
I think they're asking, what was a signal to you that someone had churned or was about to churn?
We would have had the issue of a lot of one-time buyers. So I think, we overall got good at finding people interested in the site, finding consumers who engaged and could get the first purchase, but struggled with getting the second, third, and getting them to be loyal. And you've heard me say a few times that's what attracted me to this company. And I think, largely it was because we had put a lot, when I said we were doing this in-house, we had put a lot of the emphasis on what these guys do in the whole life cycle into the beginning of the life cycle. And we're just starting to put more abilities into using data and a better way to keep people retained. And so, that would probably be the answer. We had a lot of one-time purchasers that we had a hard time getting to become loyal consumers.
Okay, thank you so much. We have one last question, and I believe this one is probably best for Ryan. If a campaign is not successful in pushing a customer to the next stage within the cycle, do you put them back into, for example, if they didn't get through the activation series to a second purchase, would you put them back in the welcome, or would you just repeat the activation series?
So I wouldn't necessarily say we would put them back into the welcome. There would probably be a follow-up campaign series similar to the welcome, because what we would want to look for is, were they not educated enough about the company or the product. Even though we build these life cycle stages, we always have to keep in mind when you're only targeting emails, you're hitting that 20 to 30% open rate. There's always a possibility that these customers might not be getting the content they should be. So we really need to find different ways to grab that information, put them into new type of life cycle retentions campaigns for activation, and from there figure out, do we just need to show them different types of product, more content to educate them, or what other channels can we reach them because they're not being touched upon. So
great. And thank you so much for everyone who submitted questions and for who joined our webinar today. Like I said, we are recording. We will be sending this out to you, and I'd just like to say a special thanks again to Ryan and Tracy for sharing their knowledge with us today, and we look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you.